Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our season 2 premiere review of Our Flag Means Death. It's back. It has been a very, very long wait. We have
Yeah.
both just recently really gotten into this show, and it is so much fun.
Oh, it's so much fun. I was so excited to get into this premiere. I couldn't wait for it to come back. I mean, there were some pretty big cliffhangers in that finale. I mean, Lucius, is he really dead or not? Like I feel like he's not.
Yeah.
But going into this premiere, I was like, man, I really hope they give us some answers on him and nothing yet, but I'm still hopeful. And then in this premiere, it was like straight up, is Izzy Hands dead? Like
Okay.
I can't believe that he's dead. Like they can't have done that, did they?
Okay, I'm gonna put on tinfoil hat here for this because
Okay.
maybe this is a polarizing opinion. It's like I want both Lucius and Izzy to be still around because I don't want to see a show as good as this lose characters who are memorable.
Yeah.
But I think you do have to get rid of one of them because I think if you leave both of them still alive, then it's gonna feel like nobody in this world dies.
No, it's true. There needs to be feel like there's actual consequence and that you can actually die in this world. But if I have to pick one of the two of them, they got to bring back Lucius. Like I need him back.
I think we're both on the same page with that. Also, it's just based on what Blackbeard is going through at the moment, I don't think it's that much of a stretch to think for a second that he wouldn't off Izzy. Of course he would off Izzy.
Absolutely. I mean, we know from the first season that he, was not killing anybody
Yeah.
and that was not a thing that was really happening. It was kind of all just an illusion, but that is not the case in this
Yeah.
premiere. Everybody's dying. He has so much loot that he's throwing it over the boat so he can get more. Like he's really in it.
All right, we're gonna before we set sail further because we have so much to get into all
Oh my
across the
goodness.
board here. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. We will be here throughout all of our Flag Means Death season 2. We'll navigate the high seas, bring you some highlights, some things we really love, share some theories, and by subscribing, you help to support us to be able to
Yep.
keep making these videos. So thank you so much for
Thank
hitting
you.
that button.
Okay, where should we start with this? Let's start with Blackbeard,
Uh,
Ed. Oh, Ed. Ed's heart is so broken. Like watching them raid that wedding
yeah,
and take the little groom who looks like Stede and keep it in his pocket. Oh, ow. Like they need to get back together by the end of the season.
I feel like they will, but I feel like they're also going to take their time. I would be, we haven't watched ahead. I would be surprised
No.
if in the first like 2 or 3 episodes they're like really back like they were in season 1 because there's clearly a lot of heartbreak. And I think what we can say about Ed here in between the aesthetic, in between the aesthetic that he is making all the crew have, in
I
between
know.
getting rid of all the books, everything that could be even tangentially related to Steed, he is hurt. He is in pain.
Yeah, and I mean the crew's really afraid to say anything.
Yeah.
The morale is down, which is how we seemingly have lost Izzy. Izzy was a really interesting character if he's dead. I say
Yeah.
it was, but we'll assume that he is. He was a really interesting character because he was kind of this middle of the road guy. Like he is a guy who's like, yeah, let's travel with Blackbeard and raid and do all this stuff. But at the other side, he does want a crew that's not going to be so unhappy or that they're at the point that they're
Yeah.
throwing treasure overboard. People could possibly have a mutiny. And he does try to talk to Ed and it's just like, listen, like, we need to talk about it. And Ed comes out, he's like, hey, does anybody want to talk about it? While pointing a gun at everybody, of course. And of course, nobody is. And it's only Izzy's the only person that's like, listen, this breakup with Steed is affecting everything and you need to get it together. And now he's been shot.
This was really the you're making a hostile work environment, Blackbeard, and then Ed is
I
basically like,
know.
well, let me make it more hostile now because I'm gonna take this guy out while all you other people watch, and then it's just like, oh, you're the first mate now. Your first job cleaning up this mess that I've created. Unless like they go and just, I don't know, find a way to resuscitate Izzy somewhere. Like I just don't see it at this point because what are you going to do? Throw the body overboard and hope someone at sea manages to find it while he's somehow still alive? It's a big stretch.
Oh, it's a stretch, but I mean anything is possible on this show. It's tough. And I mean, I think we're all anticipating when Blackbeard is going to meet back up with Stede, because you've got Blackbeard just basically like, get anything off this boat that has anything to do with him. Oh, you guys want to have a conversation? Whoever wants to have a conversation can also go, because
Yeah.
that's a Stede thing and I don't want anything to do with that. Then you have on the other side, Stede is like writing him love letters
Yeah.
and throwing them in a bottle. See, it's so cute.
There's such a I'm really rooting for these two, and it's just so funny watching the two of them process this and all the emotions in completely different ways. And
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I found interesting about Steed's fear of meeting up with Ed again is that his fear is that his life is going to be better without him, because that's what happened last season. He went back to, be with his wife, and his wife's life was better without him. And now he's like, oh, I'm not afraid of Ed killing me. I'm actually more afraid that his life is better without me. That would absolutely wreck me.
and there's such irony that this show about being a pirate and being out in, the high seas and adventure and violence, it's all kind of coming down to
Love.
love and insecurity. Like Steve is so insecure
I know.
that like he doesn't gonna fulfill Blackbeard, and clearly Blackbeard's life is not better since Steve left. It is so much worse.
Way, way worse. He needs Steed back in his life.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's not too far gone that when they do meet up again, there can be forgiveness or conversation without getting
Yeah.
killed like Izzy.
Well, this is the thing. There are degrees to pirating, and it's a ridiculous concept, but I think it's something the show plays very well. There is the perception of Steed at the start of the series where you're basically nothing. You're just having fun on the high seas. You're not really achieving anything. And then there's sort of Blackbeard as we first meet him, where he can kind of do a little bit of everything. But the Blackbeard we have now, like, this is so far an extreme version of a pirate where he basically says, and this is actually a pretty powerful line, he wants to be like the bird who never actually lands and is just constantly just moving and moving around. And that still, is that a version of him that Steve is going to be able to understand or really be with? Like, they need to sort of bring out certain parts of each other, and they obviously need to communicate. And
Yep.
I don't know what Ed is gonna say when he sees Steve. He might just yell at him and like charge full speed. Who knows?
I will say this, that when Ed said, I'm going to be the bird with no wings, basically, I'm never going to stop this ship. We are never seeing land again. We are just living on this ship forever. And I'm just going to keep sailing and sailing. It was like,
Yeah.
okay, then we need to get Steve back on the seas. He can't be hanging
Yeah.
out with Spanish Jackie and her 20 husbands. Like they have to get out of here,
Yeah.
where they end up meeting the pirate queen, who does end up basically buying him and the whole crew and takes her back to her ship.
This is going to introduce us, I think, to a bunch of new characters, new opportunities. Yeah, it does get Steve back on the high seas. It also gets him back on the high seas in a way where he doesn't really have any power at all. Like,
No, and it's also really interesting. I've always found this interesting about the show, because obviously it's a comedy and they're taking some liberties with it, but they're all based on real people.
Yeah.
So is the Pirate Queen.
yeah, and how they play around with that, because I don't think they want to make anybody like so far and away from like at least a certain part of the legend. But I mean, they've taken some already. I will admit I don't know as much about the Pirate Queen as I do, Stede Bonnet and
Yeah.
Blackbeard.
Same here. I just know that she was a real person.
I will say in general, this episode was funnier to me than I think almost any episode in season 1. I don't know if that's a choice. I don't know if they were just like, let's lean into the humor a little bit, as I'm sure a lot of you know. I mean, Taika also executive produces What We Do in the Shadows, which we also cover here.
That is the funniest show on
I
the
know.
air. I absolutely love What We Do in the Shadows. Is so good.
It is so good. And I feel like there was just a little bit more irreverent comedy throughout this episode. And I don't know if that was just born out of sort of seeing Stede and Blackbeard deal with their emotions apart from each other. I just think, having Leslie Jones as Spanish Jackie and like all the ridiculousness she brought to this episode with the Swede and the the massage, all these men are just like crawling around on the floor. It was such a ridiculous visual, but all of it was just, it made me laugh so hard, and it made me just so grateful to kind of be back with these characters again.
Yeah, we cover a lot of really serious shows here at the channel.
Yeah.
So having, What We Do in the Shadows and this show, it's just such a like breath of fresh air for us to be able to talk about something that is as funny as this show is. That whole sequence
Yeah.
of them trying to steal Spanish Jackie's treasure was so funny.
It really was, and just there's just like all these supporting characters on this show that never get enough credit or never get enough praise, and people like
Yep.
Olu. It's just, I love the whole cast. I like seeing them work together. It's also fascinating that you've got like certain crew members of the Revenge who are now with Stede, and then you also have certain ones that Blackbeard was just sort of like, nope, you're staying
Yeah,
here.
Jim, you're here.
So I like, what's gonna happen when they all kind of come back together? Because it's not just the Blackbeard and Stede story at that point. It's kind of
Yeah.
about the whole group.
No, it absolutely is. And you can see, like, Jim was really saying, like, this just doesn't feel right anymore. Like, we have so much treasure that we're being told to throw
Yeah.
it overboard. Like, what are we even doing this for anymore? The whole point is to, get riches. And we have so much riches that we're throwing it overboard. Like, this is the life that I'm stuck in now. Like, we're raiding weddings. Like, why? They're all sitting around eating wedding cake. I mean, I
Just
guess that's
funny.
a benefit.
I'll have some wedding cake. I'll just throw that out there. Really, and this is a little bit of a tinfoil hat theory, but really it's just, what is the end game for a lot of these characters going to be? I think so many of us who at least know a little bit of history know a little bit about Blackbeard, and we know a little bit about Stede, and
And they did travel together for a while.
they did. But I think the question now is just, inevitably, I think we all believe that they're going to get back together at some point. Like, the show's going to be pretty sad if they don't, and everybody is rooting for the two of them, us included. But how long can they keep this really going? Like, that's the sort of thing that hovers over my head throughout all of this. So just, they going to have a good time for a short time? Because probably ain't going to be a long time if they're pirates.
Listen, this is the thing about this season that I think we all have to have our hard hats on for. And I could be wrong, and I really hope I'm wrong. I'd love to take an L on this. My worry is that we're not going to see Stede and, Ed back together till near the finale. Like, that confrontation is not going to happen until the end of the season. They are going to be apart, and that it's going to be a lot of Stede, riding with, the Pirate Queen, trying to find him, trying to figure out what's going on. We know that Blackbeard's just gonna be sailing around indefinitely. He could be anywhere. I mean, oceans are huge, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do they find each other?
It's not necessarily the arc that I would want either. I would only be okay with it under a very select number of circumstances where, number one, we're getting some sort of evidence of communication, or at least some sort of through line for the two of them to get back together throughout, where they're mentioning each other, or they run into somebody who is just like, oh, I just saw Ed like on this past day doing whatever else. It's either that, or you find a way to introduce enough other really interesting and fun characters kind of along the way that it doesn't feel like the journey is long. It's just
Yeah.
my fear, if you're going to stretch this out most of the season, is that in my head I'm going to be thinking, okay, I want to see the reunion. I want to
Yes.
see the reunion, and
Yes.
I don't want it to take away from what's actually on screen.
It doesn't need to take all season. You guys can have them reunited somewhere in the middle where they end up having to deal with the Pirate Queen or somebody else along the way. Like, this reminds me a bit of Only Murders in the Building this season. So it's a little bit of a spoiler, but not really. I mean,
Yeah.
it's about the trio that has a podcast. And for most of season 3, they're not together. And for me, watching that show, watching them together was like the whole thing. It's
Yeah.
the whole show. It's why I love it. There's this amazing, beautiful chemistry with them. It's so fun. It's so funny. And And then it's the same over here. Having Stede and Ed together is the magic of this, and how they play off each other and the cuteness and the funniness. It's so good when they're together. I don't want a whole season of them apart. Like, they need to just get them where they've met back up again or cross paths at least by episode 3.
What does pirate therapy look like? I'm just going to throw that out there. Do you try to have them sit down with somebody who can be a little bit of a mediator? Do we bring back Spanish Jackie to be the mediator for Ed and Stede Bonnet?
She's just going to take on more husbands.
No, it's true. It's true. No, okay. Well, that is our take on our Flag Meets Death in the season 2 premiere. This is setting up to be a really, really fun season.
Yeah.
We hope you guys hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other coverage of it. And thank you to our patrons as well for your support.
Thank you.
And we will see you guys here next time.